Feels like last time I was on the show, which was 3 weeks ago, we were talking NASCAR and we were talking tyres off the back of New Hampshire with all the wet weather and such like. And here we are again. I'm back on the show and we're talking black round things. But this is, I think, positive news. How will the option tyre fare? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see how the race pans out. But strategically, are we going to see, if we get a caution with at the end of the race, but not specifically, because of course the end of the 2 stages with, 10, 12 laps to go in a stage, is someone going to bolt on a set of those soft tyres and rocket their way to the front? Normally we'd see 2 tyre stop making that, jump in the pit lane, but now we're going to see potentially the tyre offset becoming a thing. And that will obviously be key at the end of the race, especially for some people that are outside the bubble when we get back into talking about playoff picture and such like after the Olympic break, to vault themselves into potential winning position at the end of the race if it comes down to it. We know we've seen those Richmond races go fairly long in terms of green flag running in the last few years, and actually they've been strategically quite good races. I think the spring race last year sticks out to me as a really good strategy race without too much action, but it is certainly going to spice things up if we do get late cautions in stages and of course at the end of the race.
Could it be something we see at other short tracks down the road? If they decide this was a success, could they use it elsewhere?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, we saw the spring race at Richmond, of course, that was affected by rain as well. And we had the wet tyre in the beginning of the race in the spring. Now we're going to have another tyre option for the teams to get their head around. Strange that that's just the way it's worked out, I guess. But it didn't quite work, did it, at the All-Star race? When, everyone was on it at the same time. I think now in a longer race with 2 sets, you're going to have more, to use the phrase I used before, offset between cars running the different tyre compounds throughout the races. And, we might see something wildly different depending on how the teams see how the tyres are, being used in the practice sessions. So it's going to be something to look out for. It will certainly spice things up and give that second Richmond date, which we know is on the cusp of potentially fading away entirely, something really good. And then we'll have the traditional, they've got to keep this. And by then it'll perhaps be too late because we might even get a calendar announcement by then. But it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. I'm guessing you've got similar feelings, Ben, perhaps on this.
I'll go to our friend Matthew Owens first. And Matthew, thank you again for going in for us last week here. I think it might be used more for a pit stop from a playoff bubble team to try to win a shorter stage rather than try to win the race with 70 or 80 laps to go. That's true, but stages are going to throw a whole nother wrinkle into the strategy aspect of this as well. Matt, I want to see these on a road course. I think that the option in prime tire, obviously we see it in Formula One, and we have 3 different tire compounds there that, and of course there's no refueling because the races are short enough. So that's where all your strategy, or most of your strategy at least, comes in. And it's obviously been very successful there with Pirelli, and Firestone obviously uses it on the road and street courses for IndyCar. But, when we go to the Indianapolis 500, we're not talking about red versus black. We're talking about strategy from many different aspects, but that's not one of them. So I don't know. I mean, this has gotten very mixed reviews. I know we tried it at the All-Star race, I want to say 2018, 2019, somewhere in that time span. I think the option tires were green lettered at the time for Goodyear. And we just tried it again and again, kind of got a lukewarm response. So I'm glad NASCAR's trying it again here for a points-paying race, because I think that, anytime there's, higher stakes on the line, I think that's also going to impact how teams choose to utilize this. But I personally, it's just a hypothesis from me. I'm hardly an engineer or a tire specialist or anything, but I would think that we might see results closer to what we're intending to provide by doing this if we try it on a road course. That would be the next test for me for NASCAR. Can we try to use this? And I know that that's tougher because all of our exhibition races, all 2 of them, I guess, the Clash and the All-Star race are races that take place on short ovals. But if we could at least do some tire testing on the road courses with these option tires, I think that would be the next step that I'd like to see.
Yeah, perhaps roll it out at Watkins Glen or the Roval in the play, or one of them in the playoffs later in the year. Give a bunch of teams some sets to take up there 1 week, and give them a run. And then and we know how the Watkins Glen race last year was a bit of a dud. Last summer, of course, now it's moving to the playoffs, which bumps it. It could be bumped even more if we had tire options. Adam says, "Good evening, Adam. Ben, I'll agree with your option tyres on a road course. Which road course would you like to see? Well, I think Watkins Glen probably takes P1, doesn't it, on that chart?
Yeah, I agree. I think Watkins Glen is, I think, sometimes called the super speedway of NASCAR road courses because of how fast it is, how fast sweeping a lot of corners are, and I think that could really play into the tire strategy's favor. And Matthew also bringing up a good point about Wilkesboro, saying it was just repaved. Richmond's obviously much more worn out track, so that's going to be interesting as well. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm excited. I don't expect it to work as well as I think we would all like to see it, or as well as we're hoping or intending, but I appreciate that they haven't given up on it yet, because I think it is a nice way to implement a little bit more strategy into the races, and we see it in other series. It's maybe something that NASCAR can learn from, so we'll see how it turns out. But some big news here. We're actually going to get it a points paying race, so we'll have that to look forward to.